Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this session. Gonna hide my meeting controls. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about this work. This is new work. And so if you see me actually going analog and relying on my notes a little bit, it's because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. I have been working on a chapter with a scholar in Canada, Suzanne Smythe. If anybody familiar with her work or seen some of her stuff, I encountered Suzanne's work about 10 years ago when I was doing my dissertation work, and just really valued what she had to say about digital literacy instruction for adults. And we're co-authoring a chapter that's going to appear in an international handbook on digital literacies, coming out probably next year. Will be free and open, not open, but free. Like anybody can get access to it, which is great because sometimes these books are like $500 and you're like, who's going to read them? So it's really nice that it's going to be available. Anyway, this is because we have we have a lot of past experience in working in digital literacy labs or doing research in them. And really, this idea of digital literacy labs, like these drop-in labs, is kind of coming back because we have a lot of digital navigator programs now. So I have done a lot of writing and thinking and trying to doing PD on helping people embed digital skills instruction into academic and content instruction. That is so incredibly important. So don't let go of that. That's the work of the Digital Resiliency in the American Workforce stuff, DRAW, which we've been working on at World Ed. And by the way, I'm Jen Vanek. I'm with World Ed. I forgot to say that. But because we have these digital navigator programs where learners are coming in with like real, like immediate need, like great. It's great. I'm getting a computer and access here. And oh, by the way, I need to like check on whatever social service thing. I need to apply for a job. I need to do, whatever the thing is. So skills are now like in the moment. And so Suzanne and I were reflecting on how we need to support teachers in not only responding in the moment so that people have immediate need, but then also how through that experience we can still work on these transferable skills, building this digital resilience, which is so important. So that is the work of the chapter. I'm not going to get into a lot of the researchy stuff. I want to talk to you instead about the practical examples. And then you're going to get a chance to explore some of the resources that we think are connected to these theories and then talk about them. I just really, something that I do, oh, where am I? I hate this with Zoom. Okay. I just want to acknowledge that we're here in a space that's been occupied for a very long time by others. And I just think let's just pause for a sec and recognize that we're passing through, much like others. Hi, Cheryl, have a seat. So I'm from Minneapolis. Suzanne works in Vancouver. We are now in Texas. And each of these places is united in the fact that there have been Indigenous communities here for a very, very long time. Okay, so there is a QR code on the screen because I have a Padlet. The slides are in the Padlet. I could not actually get my slides in Whova, but the slides are in the Padlet. And there are also a lot of resources and instructional examples in the Padlet. So this is going to be sort of like your go-to place a couple times during the session. So I will give you a moment to check that out. One other little housekeeping thing. World Education is one of the co-leaders of the Digital Literacy and Technology Strand. And at one, this is my colleague, Rachel Riggs. Rachel is going to be hosting a lunch. Do you want to just say a word about that? Or yeah, go ahead. Just say a word about what you're doing at one.
It's a technology networking meeting for anyone at COABE who's interested in technology and adult education. And we're just joining together for lunch, very casual, to talk about digital literacy and technology or other topics.
Brian Beeman A. Yeah, cool. And because of that, we're probably going to end a little bit before 1 so that Rachel can get there. And I actually am going to the airport, so it works out really well. Okay, so like I said, Suzanne and I have been thinking about this because we have this understanding that we have, as teachers or educators, we've got this dual need to both respond to students in the moment, help them with the digital tasks that they need to accomplish immediately, very important things to support their work, learning, civic engagement. And we understand that we can't just go rely on these fast pedagogies, like, here, just let me do it for you kind of pedagogies. We have to help them build confidence so they can do these tasks when they encounter them without any support. So for the work that we did for this chapter, we reflected on our past research and our past experiences working in digital labs, and started to, like, the research questions behind this experience have been, what can we learn about digital literacy's instruction by doing research in community technology settings? Because a lot of the research is done in K-12 or post-secondary. There's not a ton in these, especially in these more informal community settings. What theoretical approaches can help enrich instruction for adult learners in these settings, and how might an interdisciplinary approach weave in the characteristics of theories to really inform quality instruction? So one of the reasons I think thinking theoretically is important is that it nudges teachers to ask why. Like, why does this approach resonate with me? And because of what I know about the learners in front of them, why do I think this resource is going to work for me? So I'm not saying you pause and like do a bunch of research and read into learning theories before you make decisions, but if you just have a sense of why, I think it could be fruitful. So, like I said, I'm just going to introduce some of the theories that we encountered and then make some connections to some examples and have you talk about them. So before we get any further, I really want to make sure we're on the same page about what I mean by learning theory. So what is it? It is an explanation of how people acquire, process, or retain knowledge. It's formed and tested through systematic processes of observation, experimentation, and analysis. A lot of times these start off with like logic models that like inform research and then get confirmed or shifted. And then as more people do research informed by this, it gets enriched. And why do we care? Because they give us a framework for making decisions about instruction, because we understand how learning works. And it can help guide educators in designing more effective strategies and designing resources in a way that are going to really be helpful. So I'm going to pause for a sec, and I'm going to have to walk around the room because I want our online friends to hear. So here's a question. Have you taught in a digital literacy lab in one of these like environments where you're like drawn to fast pedagogies because you've got learners with just in time needs? That might be like the two-step verification process to get into Canvas, all right? Like that's kind of the stuff I'm talking about. Anybody had one of these experiences? Yeah, you want to share? I would love for one or two people to like share. Who wants to talk into the microphone so everybody can hear you really clearly? You said, oh yeah. Can I come to you?
I'm a little hoarse right now, but so we don't have something called a lab, but we have people coming in on a weekly basis, several days a week, who are needing instant results. They need to apply for a job that they have to apply online. I have had someone that needed to apply for DACA, and there was a lot of things that needed to be uploaded, and so we had to assist them in doing all that. So, yeah, we have a lot of experience with that, but not necessarily in that setting what you're calling.
That's what I'm talking about. That's totally what I'm talking about. Anybody else want to add anything? Yeah.
We have a lot of NRS1 learners in a distance learning environment, but we've decided in order to maintain retention and really help that environment thrive, we've created these distance learning intensives that we have students come to if they want to take online classes with us. So they come for 2 days and learn how to use Zoom and WhatsApp, but it's like a very fast, but it's interpreted. And so you get the link like in your native language, and then they can be onboarded into the classroom. But
that's great. That's another. Okay, one more example. Right here.
We do IET training and we do Google Classrooms and we have different platforms. We actually have them meet with a case manager, a bilingual case manager, set everything up, mark everything so it's easy for them to go back in, give them sheets and have them take pictures of all their passwords so they have it on hand when they say, oh, I can't find it.
Yeah, that's great. What I think is really interesting about all of these settings you were talking about is that we actually learn a lot about learners' lives by the digital challenges they bring into these classrooms. So you can get a sense about the types of things they're going to encounter and be like challenged by outside of the classroom too. And I love how you, especially at the end, you were getting to like something you actually like why you do this. We do it this way because they need to. And that's kind of what we're getting at when we're thinking like about these like learning theories, like what's the why for what you do. So learners are coming in, maybe doing things like applying for social services. We heard maybe they are trying to deal with this, CAPTCHA situation, two-step verification, just trying to navigate like what the different types of inboxes now we have in something like Gmail. Accessing services. Again, these are just some examples from our past work, like logging in to do some online learning or like figuring out YouTube. All of these are situations that can help us, like we have to think about why the way we're responding as we help learners do these things. So we think, like through our past research, that and Suzanne has an active lab in Vancouver right now. She's on faculty at Simon Fraser University. My work has a lot of this was working in digital literacy labs that are supported by AmeriCorps members. And then also I was a contributor to the landscape scan for the digital resilience in the American workforce. So that's where a lot of my examples come from. But as we were poring over these examples and thinking about them, we were seeing theorizing like happening as teachers were responding to things that learners were saying. For example, learners would say something like, I want to learn to spell and type, and then I will learn email. In the meantime, you can help me with my email and I'll do it for myself. What was really clear from a lot of the work that we did was like the foundation of this was relevant, highly contextualized practice. Okay, so that is one thing to hang on to. But then as we kept reading, it was clear that that wasn't enough, that not everybody has access to the same types of practice or even access to like the technologies required to practice at all. So we were like, okay, there's something else here too that's like complicating this. Like, okay, we've got this theory that practice is important, but what if people don't get access to practice? And there's also this like sort of understanding that we saw represented in our data that some learners don't think that the technology is meant for them, or it's designed to keep them out. Like this quote from this learner, we're always getting caught in these loops. And then also it's a shared experience. They're seeing other learners struggle similarly. So there's like another layer there. So a little bit of like a reflection or a critical layer there. And then finally, like technology today is way different than it was 2 years ago. And assuming that we give people practice, that we teach them to be reflective, is that enough? When we are in a situation where learners are actually having their experience shaped not just by their own agency and skills, but by like agentic digital technologies that are reaching in and helping shape their experiences online. So this quote from this learner, the more I go on YouTube, the more ads I get for seniors. This is an elder in the learning lab. YouTube knows me and it's following me around. Like really disconcerting if you're a learner, maybe, right? You need to be able to understand why this might be happening. So based on these observations, we identify 3 theories that are layered that we think are really useful. First is practice engagement theory. This is the work of Steve Reeder. Anybody familiar with this work? This is sociocultural theory, and that's based on this idea, that we learn because our learning is shaped by all the inputs in what surrounds us, in our situation, in our social experiences, and all of that stuff inputs. Steve Reeder took that a step further and said, yes, of course, it's sociocultural, the situation around us informs us, but what is actually really true is that learners learn by doing. And the more that they are learning, and this work, I want to be clear, started with literacy and is that now been extended to numeracy and digital literacies. The more you do something and practice out in the real world, the more the deeper the skills that you are taught in the classroom like sink in. And it's like this circular process. And so the more practice, the better. But like I said, maybe insufficient. There might not be enough there. So we have this like, okay, we need a little bit of a critical lens here. We need some reflection. And so I will be completely honest with you in the chapter. This is critical pedagogy. And I think that in this time, it's more useful for you as teachers to be able to talk about this in language where you feel totally confident and secure. And so I went back and I found some information around reflective inquiry that is actually quite similar. And so I'm using the term reflective inquiry here as a nudge for people to question underlying assumptions about the way these technologies are shaped, what context digital literacy is being practiced in, and what are the consequences of using this learning and instruction. Then the third layer, the socio-materiality. Anybody read into this or heard about this? Okay, I think this has been around a while. There have always been theorists, especially in the literacies, like in critical literacy and literacy research, but to talk about like the social is the people. It's what you're bringing to it. But the materiality is all of these things that also shape your learning. So even like socio-materialist would say, even this is a material that shapes learning. But what's different now is we have these, like the YouTube thing. YouTube is following me around. It's shaping my experience. So we think not one of these theories is sufficient. Like practice engagement theory is awesome. Reflective inquiry or pedagogy or critical pedagogy, super important. And we also need learners to understand now that while they're developing agency, they need to understand how machines, what the agency of these technologies they're engaged in, like how that shapes their experience. So now I'm going to pause and go through this a little bit more slowly with each one. And you're going to get a chance to see some examples. Maybe we'll chat a little bit as we can, as time permits. And then after we get through all three, I'm going to turn you loose on the Padlet. And you're going to get to explore some of the examples that I'm going to highlight as I'm talking. And we'll have some conversation about how you feel about all this. Like, as I said, this is the first time I've done this kind of this presentation for teachers and educators. And so I really genuinely want to know how this resonates with you, if you find this useful. Okay. Do we have any questions, Rachel, in the chat before I get going? Okay. Okay, so a little bit more about practice engagement theory, because I think it's worth repeating all of these because you might be hearing about them for the first time. So literacy proficiency develops as a byproduct of engagement in everyday reading and writing practices. And then literacy proficiencies influence the levels of engagement in such practices. So if you can't practice, you're not going to increase your proficiency. This is a quote from the chapter. There's a connection between use of technology in class and confidence in real world use of technology. Instruction should prioritize real world digital literacy tasks and require regular practice of them, right? This is draw, right? Embed this in your instruction. On the bottom, you can see some of the scholars that I've cited to support this work. Steve Reeder, first among them. This Wicht et al. Is actually a co-authored paper with Steve Reeder. This is the digital literacy application of it. And then Margaret Patterson, who is a fabulous adult ed researcher, has also done some research using practice engagement theory to explore how adults with learning disabilities use technology to learn. It's a great paper. I can share any of this literature with you. If you can't exit yourself, just let me know. Okay, how does this resonate with you? Anybody, like, what are you thinking? I would love to get input about how this shows up in your work.
Am I hearing this right? That this is kind of like almost like a domino effect, or it's creating this cycle of like more engagement then leads more learning, and then I engage more meaningfully.
Yes, it is. It feels like it's not rocket science, doesn't it? And yet, so Steve's research on this was centered around instruction, literacy instruction, and relying on like how when learners go out into the world, are they like practicing CASAS test questions? No, they are not. They are actually using these literacy practices. And so he did a study that like measured this Wicht paper, they actually went back to the PIOC data from 2017, 2018. And they like looked at people's literacy practices. Do you read the paper? Do you read to your kids? Do you read at work? And then they like equated that with literacy levels over time. And this is how practice engagement theory, this argument was strengthened. So what do you think? Is this showing up in your work at all? Is that Nadia? I haven't seen you in person. Hi.
Yeah, you look different off a computer. So actually, it's a little different because I work with practitioners, not with learners. But what I've been noticing is that if the digital literacy is low for a practitioner, they're less likely to engage with learning technology in the classroom with their learners. It's exactly here. It's like the quotes you picked up really spoke to me on that. We sent out an email about training, and there were concerns because some people were saying, I only know how to use this browser on my computer. Like, I don't know how to use any of this. I don't know how to access this. I don't know how to get into my email. And it was, we were not expecting that. And there's clearly a need, and bridging that gap is so important.
Yeah, and we know that teachers are learners. I mean, I'm a learner all the time. I learn from Rachel about generative AI all the time. She's like, hey, we can do this now. Like, cool. Anybody else resonate? Yeah.
I notice practices mentioned in here a couple times, but no mention of skills. So I'm guessing that the thought here is that the skills are going to be developing in context, that it's by doing something sort of meaningful that these skills kind of are developed, right?
I appreciate that observation. And this relates to actually something I was presenting on yesterday when thinking about literacy and how everything starts with skill. Like if you think about, so remember, this came from the world of reading. And so that decoding, and then the literacy, like the context, why am I reading this? And then yesterday I took it to like multi-literacy. So what happens when we bring technology into this? I have to know information literacy. I've got to know media literacy. So yes, I think that skills are implied as a building block of literacy. That's how I read it. Anybody else want to respond or have a question or want to have an example? Okay. Anything online?
Michael was saying that this is spot on in his work with seniors, strategy to engage them where they are.
That's great. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of something that I think is useful. This is an example that comes from the chapter. We are really big on instructional routines. If you've read through the draw materials, you'll see ed tech routines all over the place. The draw playbook, I think I put it in the Padlet. Digital Resilience in the American Workforce. It's a federally funded initiative that we're collaborating with JFF on. So a repeated structured sequence of steps designed to help support teachers and their students deliver content and fostering learning in a predictable way. So do something many times, okay? Shift your context slightly so that they're seeing how what the skill they mastered over here doing this is a little bit different and can be achieved in a slightly different context also. So you got to provide structured, repetitive activities that develop digital literacies through consistent use of the tool. And we are going to I don't know if I should go to the Padlet now or not. Maybe I will. No, I'm not going to because I want to talk through this. But in the Padlet, you will see a link to the playbook, the draw playbook that has descriptions of embedded digital literacy skills instruction. At the end of each one, there are links to actual instructional routines that are digital literacy routines. But what you can see in front of you right here is an example. This is an exit ticket. Exit tickets are instructional routines. If you craft your exit ticket so that it's a Google form, then you have an ed tech routine. And you get your students used to filling out online forms. So even if you have a drop-in lab, okay, this is an example from a classroom, but what if you have a drop-in lab? Put your attendance or participation in a Google form, make it so it mirrors a digital task they would have to use in the real world. And then they're have the security of turning to someone for help who they trust while they're in a safe space. So one example. Okay, I'm going to move on. The next layer of this, remember, we're thinking about this in a layered way. Practice is amazing. It's essential. Yet Suzanne and I suspect it's not enough. And I'm really eager to hear what you think about that. So we think that you need to reflect. So reflective inquiry, I'm thinking about as, what you can't just rotely click to practice. There needs to be some layer of reflection and thoughtfulness about it. So we think about reflective inquiry as a continuous and iterative process. And I've actually drawn on the work of four different theorists here to stitch together what I think is a reasonable approximation of what's needed. So first we have, I mean, we're going way back to Dewey, okay? The first person who talked about work-based learning, okay? John Dewey has been like mind blowing to me. Every time I think I don't need to think about it again, I'm like, oh, really? I need to think about it again. So Dewey talked a lot about reflective thinking, deliberate, purposeful reflection and learning and problem solving. So problem solving pops up here immediately. Then we move to Freire, okay? Paulo Freire, again, one of those scholars who keeps being relevant, even though, was writing in the 70s. Just talking about reflection, this active process where learners examine their thoughts, feelings, and actions, foster deeper understanding of improvement in their practices, and think critically. And the other thing about Freire is this is dialogic, meaning you're talking with the learners about these things, and learners are talking and collaborating about these things, and that process supports confidence in their learning. Then the final layer of this is Garrison and Moon. So Garrison is communities of inquiry. Have you read like social presence, teacher presence? If you've done work in instructional design or read into like how to set up an online classroom, you might have encountered Garrison. Garrison's community of inquiry model highlights the importance of collaboration again, where we are learning, learning is social, and we need to prompt each other to reflect and push each other in our learning. And Moon, actually, I learned about Moon for this project. I had never read into Moon, but Moon provides really practical examples for incorporating reflective inquiry into educational settings with the goal of giving learners practice, supported practice in doing that own reflection on their own. So you get the point here. You can't just have people practice. There needs to be a layer of reflection and collaboration so they understand, like, if they're a learner that is like, this technology isn't me. I have like no legitimacy in use of technology because it's like not built for me. I've tried to log in 10 times. It never lets me in. You pause and you problem solve and you're like, okay, let's work together. Let's think through the steps you went through. Think about why it's not working and let's try again. Is this showing up in any of your work? Would anyone like to share an example? Maybe something that happened in your classrooms or in the classrooms you support? Yes, I'm coming to Pennsylvania.
One time in a computer lab setting, I had a student who would come in and whatever her request was, we'd start going through the steps together. And I think you mentioned it earlier, she like wanted to write down every single step. But then when she'd try it independently later, if something went even slightly differently than she expected, she would get lost in that process. So I can see how the reflective inquiry, if we had been able to take the time to say like, why are we doing these steps and how can you adapt when it doesn't go as expected, could be helpful.
Anyone want to add to that? That's a really great example. That reminds me of the PIOC, like the problem solving in technology rich environments, and then which is from the PIOC, it's from the OECD, but then built on by Jill Kastick, who's actually one of the editors of this edited volume, who took PIOC, that problem solving in technology rich environments, and added this layer of, humans, and she calls it digital problem solving. Like really our first step is turning to the person next to us who we think might have some understanding of what we want to do. So yeah, so pause, turn, talk, think through, really work through this through a problem solving process. Yeah, Rachel. Oh, I'm sorry. I never remember what PIOC stands for, but I'm going to tell you. Do you know?
Program for International Assessment of Adult Competencies.
Thank you. And the OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Thank you. Yes. So this is the survey of adult skills. The recent scores just came out like a couple months ago. And the recent actual exam does not have PSTR on it anymore. It's problem solving, like writ large, not just constricted or related to technology. Thank you, Rachel. Okay. So anything online that I want? Okay. So an example. There are actually multiple examples because I think this is an approach that actually hits on a lot of things that we do with instructional routines. So 1-minute papers. Okay. Students briefly reflect on what they learned. What questions remain, like KWLs maybe, right? What do you wonder? What do you know? What do you want to ask? That kind of thing. And how it connects to their prior knowledge. So just 1-minute papers. I think that's a really cool idea. And then learning should be collaborative and social. So think, pair, share. Like we do this all the time as teachers. Problem solving, really problem focused instruction. You could even do problem-based learning, like long projects that focus maybe across the duration of a whole class or a couple to support problems. But I really like, your example. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Sarah's example around this is like you're talking about problem-based learning. Like what would I do? I would have them stop and pause and figure out how to move on. So problem-based learning doesn't need to be a big unit. It could actually happen in the moment, I think. And then self-assessment, encourage them to really think about what they're doing and why. Okay. So this is like the big new one, I think maybe for people. It's new for me. I haven't really I didn't really think about this much until generative AI came around, and it has lots of importance to me right now, and I think about it a lot. So socio-materiality is a learning theory. And with respect to technology, okay, I'm just going to talk about technology now. Digital ecosystems are made up of both people and technologies. That's socio-materiality. Okay, people is socio, computers are the materiality. And they work together to create digital experiences. You're not just operating in isolation, okay? Even your car now, right, is an example of this, I think, of the way a lot of new cars operate. Both actively influence and change what happens in the online experience by taking action and by making decisions. So it's a collaborative process, but it's not one that's visible to a lot of learners if they don't understand how these technologies work. And I mean, this sounds sort of sci-fi, but yeah, it's agency of machines to some extent. And here's a quote from the chapter. What we read, how we are conditioned to imagine ourselves as readers is increasingly determined by algorithms that operate underneath the surface of text, digital text, online text. Students need to understand how algorithms work, but do need to reflect on the inferential processes, what they can infer by seeing these technologies happening when they're interacting with the algorithms. There is actually a whole new line of inquiry now called algorithmic literacy. So interesting. Like, how do we understand how these algorithms were put together? Who do they work for? Who do they exclude? I think it's fascinating. So we see this. I'm going to move this so you can see the example. If I can. Okay. So again, we've got the YouTube example, right? YouTube is following me around. I keep seeing these ads for seniors or whatever. Like I was talking to a friend who was going to sell her VW van, and like they were going to like try to build a Sprinter van. And all of a sudden we were on a walk and I got home and I'm like, my Facebook feed is full of Sprinter van ads. I'm like, I can't pay for a Mercedes. I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, this is, that's one example. Another example. So here's the YouTube example and what you can do as educators. Help learners recognize when AI is shaping their experience. Have them pull up their YouTube, right? Have on their phone, where they've got some data. There's data cookied there that's informing the AI. Teach prompt engineering. Okay, so you as a teacher can use prompt engineering to make really cool instructional materials. And Rachel's going to talk about that this afternoon in her session at 2 in the same room where the lunch is happening, or the yeah. And in one of the PD experiences that Rachel put together for our summer of learning, we did we do these EdTech maker spaces where we bring teachers together, we teach them something, and then while they're learning, they're making. Rachel taught the teachers this framework for prompt writing: role, action, context, example, and format. Taught the teachers this prompt format for putting into ChatGPT, and at the time it was Bard. And they came up with this amazing book of activities that are linked in the Padlet. So when we get to Padlet exploration, that's one of the things that you can look at. You can teach students prompt engineering too. And when, not when to use it, and when you should just do a Google search, because We don't need to like waste tons of server space and water for certain things, like do math on a calculator, as Rachel says. Okay, finally then, you can actually use generative AI technologies in tools that you already probably have access to. This is an example from a teacher who we featured in an EdTech strategy session. The whole YouTube, like there's a 20-minute YouTube video in the Padlet where she talks about this. You might know that Google Slides sort of has this embedded into it right now. There's GPT for Sheets. I've got it. It's sort of highlighted here. And this teacher embedded this feature in one of the columns of a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet, had students add their writing, and then they got feedback automatically from ChatGPT on their writing. So yes, that is mind-blowing and awesome. And I think the really cool thing is this teacher was like, yeah, that's cool, but that's not enough. Okay, I want you to evaluate the feedback. And I want you to demonstrate what was what was different between what you did and what ChatGPT recommended, and what are you going to do with it? Are you going to accept it? So students seeing how the Gen AI fits into instruction, and then students claiming some agency and deciding, evaluating, and then deciding how they're going to make use of it. So it's the socio and the material without getting rid of the people, which is super important with these technologies. Any other examples that have you used any of these technologies in your classrooms or as you've prepared? Maybe you've just used them to make things for teaching. Anything online? Okay. All right. I wasn't even going to pause here for questions because I wasn't sure how far down this road people had gone, but there are some really amazing things out there. Okay.
Someone is asking, many adults still see technology as a big monster, almost impossible to learn. How can we address this mindset effectively in addition to providing the right tools? So I think, how do we help them feel like this is approachable?
Well, this is actually interesting question because it hits on why Suzanne and I decided that one learning theory was not enough. That first of all, you have to give people an opportunity, step by step, very gradual. Like I go back to, if you're working with English learners, you need to teach them the vocabulary of digital skills. Like they need to be able to ask questions and follow instructions. And so that might require pausing and teaching some of these words, which is why the digital skills glossary is one of the products from Draw. And you can, I think I linked to that in the Padlet too. So yeah, like pausing, going gradually, I think giving learners opportunities to use technologies that they can immediately see are relevant in their daily lives, and reflecting on that experience. And then I mean, just start out, I think with the Gen AI stuff and the AI following me around thing, just start showing people, I think is really an important thing to do. And please feel free to ask a follow-up question if I didn't answer that well enough. Oh, we've got another question over here.
It's not a question, it's a comment. I think maybe seeing their peers, real peers, at the same level as they are, successfully using something, and having that person coach the one who thinks that the technology is a monster.
Well, I'm going to Patty. So Kathy Harris has a really good paper that it was in the AL journal. I think it was in the adult. Jennifer, what is that? What's the AL stand for? Adult Literacy and Education. Yeah, they did a computer lab in public housing sites in Florida, in California. And she writes about peer-to-peer collaboration. And it's like a really powerful thing that she's researched. Yeah, Patty.
Hi, I think there's also value in when you have a teacher that's struggling a little bit with technology and showing their students that they are struggling, and this is how they're building their resilience and problem solving.
Yeah, just be transparent about that. Why not? Anyone else? Yeah, Nadia.
I have a more general question. barely sounds like it's on. I, like real close. Okay, we're getting really intimate. I feel like being at a conference with hundreds of people, we're all gonna get sick or something. It's inevitable, but that's the price we pay. Anyway, I was thinking about there's a mixed bag of interest in AI in general. So there are I'm talking anecdotally, there are practitioners who are really interested in how to use this with their students and their own practice. And there's also people who are very afraid of AI in general, of like, this is using so many resources. This we're using technology that's going to eventually replace us. So I guess I wonder how to approach that kind of beginning of like, because making AI visible for students, we have to make it visible for practitioners first. If they don't fully, if they're not, there's no buy-in, there's no excitement or interest, then we're not getting there.
I will answer this very briefly and say that Rachel is presenting an AI integration framework at 2 p.m. where you'll get deeper into that. But I mean, the way I think about this is it's not that much different from other new technologies that we've had to think about and incorporate into instruction or our daily lives. It's just a little scarier because of this, the machines reaching in a little bit more. So
probably, are you saying that perhaps there should be a kind of historical and cultural look at technology in general could be a framework or a beginning?
Yeah, Rachel says that's a great idea. Yeah, I like it.
It has certainly been productive in my work with other educators to look at the history of ed tech. And there's a great open free book out there. It's called 20 Years of Ed Tech. And I think it helps people see that, you know, this has been going on for a long time, and we've pivoted and we've adapted, and we are there again, and we shall overcome.
Thoughtfully, with reflection and lots of practice. Yes. Okay. Now is the time where y'all get to explore and check out these things. So I don't know if you have laptops here. If you do, I just find Padlet easier to use on a laptop, but you can also do this on your phone. But what I really hope is that we'll get into some small groups. If you're working online, you're going to be doing this independently because I only have one mic. We can't possibly connect you to everybody. So you're going to choose a theory. And I would love you to find a collaborator or two in that theory. You're going to find it. There's a Padlet column, actually. Maybe I'll go to Padlet. After I do these instructions, I'll show you. Just start playing with some of the examples that I've posted in the Padlet under that theory column and discuss what you're seeing. What do you notice? What seems relevant? What seems like, oh God, I wish I'd thought of this, or no, we do this better. Okay. Because there's also a box with a plus sign where you can add other, like your own ideas. Like, let's make a Padlet that we can all share and use. I want to learn from you because I'm sure you're doing really cool stuff on this. And then we're going to come back and have a little bit of a discussion. So this is intentionally a very long collaboration time. Sorry, and you're welcome if you like that. But I really want to give you a chance to dig in and look at these things. So, and we are going to end at 12:55 because we want to be able to, people can get to the EdTech Strand lunch, like networking thing. So let's say for 10 minutes, you all are going to explore, and then we'll take 10 minutes to talk about what you've seen. So the Padlet, I'll go back to the slides in case you missed the QR code for the Padlet. And if you want, the bit.ly is actually, it's VANEK, VANEK -theory -COABE 2025. If you are on a machine, like a laptop, and you want to get to Padlet that way. VANEK, my last name is VANEK, V as in Victor, ANEK. But that's not very fair. There we go. VANEK -theory -COABE 2025 is the Padlet. And please let me know if anybody's gotten there. And it's in the Whova chat. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so who's gonna talk about practice engagement theory? Like who likes that as an idea? Or maybe who wants to do reflective inquiry? Who wants to do socio-materiality? I'm gonna let you sort it, or I could just assign sections of the room. What's your preference? Okay, we got socio-materiality up here in the front. Who would like to, sorry, what's your name? Sarah, who would like to join Sarah to talk about the AI stuff? Socio-materiality, right up here. Who's talking about practice engagement theory? Okay, we got practice here. Who else is interested in practice? And then what are y'all thinking? Reflection back in the corner. Reflective inquiry in the back. So we got practice engagement theory here, socio-materiality here, reflective inquiry here. Thank you. And online, you can jump into whatever you desire. And we're going to come back in 10 minutes. Socio-material is getting bigger. We can actually have 2 socio-material groups. How about we do that? Yeah. How about I'm sorry, could some of you stand up and go there? Basically back to where you were sitting, Cheryl. You guys stay, you guys go. Cool. Thank you. There you go. So you're all together here. Thank you. This is not structured. Explore, talk. That's basically the instruction. You can see that everybody's got a column. And then if you've got other theories that are really important to you, you could add it. Like maybe you want to talk about Malcolm Knowles and andragogy or hudagogy. Feel free to add it. Okay, hello. I'm really interested in hearing what you're talking about. So we'll come back together as a big group in like 30 seconds. Okay, so while you're wrapping up, I'm just going to give you a tour of the Padlet just to make sure you see everything. The slides are here. It's a PDF of the slides. Then we have our practice engagement theory column, which I'm sure you noticed. So we've got this amazing resource from New South Wales, the Digital Learning Selector. It's just a ton of instructional routines that involve technology, and it's a fabulous resource. Then we have the draw playbook that I talked about at the end of each of these chapters. There are some instructional routines. And then we have our EdTech integration strategy toolkit. Also tons of routines. So if you're looking there, that's what you'll find. If you have other ways you think you're supporting practice engagement theory, I would love to hear about it. Or if you've used any of these things, this is fully interactive. You can add comments, you can like, please, while you're like waiting for coffee, keep your Padlet open on your phone and like give me some engagement here. I want to see what resonates with you. With the reflective inquiry, you were able to look at just a website from Avid. Do you know the Avid programs that are mostly secondary level? They're around teaching students who might not be doing, they might not be like have a lot of schooling in their family or in their background. And so Avid provides a lot of really amazing supports for them so that they can persist in their learning. They do a lot of reflection and support in Avid programs. And so I think their website has really got a lot of some ideas. Then we've got some resources to support critical problem solving and critical thinking. This is a whole Padlet or whole blocks in. These are like, I basically went into Skill Blocks, which is a free tool you can use to find open and free digital resources. I did a search on problem solving, and what you can link to is what I think the link is going to lead you to are a bunch of resources like Skill Blocks, instructional strategies. Of course, TSTM has been talking about digital problem solving for a long time, and so I linked you there. And then with socio-materiality, we've got the prompt book, and then the clip of the teacher who's talking about Excel. So what did you talk about? I would love to hear some insight from you on how what you think about these resources, or if there are others that you wish were there.
Yeah, Pamela, I don't know if you want to unmute. For everybody online, there is a raise hand button. So if you would like to unmute and share out loud, then raise your hand and we will unmute you. For now, I'll read Pamela's comment. Just sharing. Oh, excellent. Okay, so you should be able to unmute now. There she goes.
Go ahead, Pamela. We're not sure we'll be able to hear you, but I would love for you to try. I'm not sure if you're talking. Can you tell Rachel if you're talking or not? You're not talking yet. Okay. Okay, let's go to someone in the room while we're waiting. Anybody have a response to the materials or the examples? You just need more time with it? Yeah, I know. But we do have a charity hand raised back here.
One of the things we really focused on was the just practice, right, that they need so many opportunities to practice and so many different methods of practice. And one of the comments we talked about was just the idea that many classes and instructors are already using so many digital tools and softwares and activities. If you think of like Kahoots or all kinds of those type of softwares, however, they're not using it explicitly to teach the digital skill. It's just so implicit, like just use this QR code so you can get to that website. right, just to get to the content. But if you take the time to sort of slow down, teach them the digital vocabulary, make that digital skill explicit, that then they can kind of have that transferability, but they really are practicing if they understand that they're practicing those digital skills.
I love that. Yeah, making what they're doing explicit so they realize they have these skills that they can take into the world. I think that's wonderful. I think that's actually a wonderful blending of these two ideas. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Does Pamela want to say something now?
I shall speak for her. I don't think we figured it out, but she just shared a great example in the Padlet of a practice that I think weaves together maybe all of these theories around Google Docs. And so she'll put up Google Docs onto a big screen and pass around a wireless mouse and keyboard in class for students to get practice with it. And then they actually complete a resume in Google Docs, and then they reflect and talk about what were the challenges and successes and why that's beneficial to create your resume with a word processor. So just a really great lesson idea.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And if others have ideas they want to add to the Padlet, I would love to see them. So you can comment. Yeah, look at that nice description there. Thank you so much. You can either comment on how you might have used some of these other resources. You can add your own example. If you have another theory that resonates with you, feel free to add it, because sorry, this trackpad is very challenging. On the right, there is an "what other theories are you thinking of" column, and I welcome you. You're welcome to add other things. Okay, any other questions, final insights? I'm trying to get that hand raised lowered. Okay, just gonna go to the slides. Yes, yeah, we got one more comment. Can you get the share or the slideshow back up?
I would just say setting that time for practice, because we have certain curriculum that we want to go through or content, but then having that time at the end for the learners to actually practice what they've learned. And with practice, you also need the devices to be able to do that practice. And I've seen a lot of times where, it's an open setting where you're, presenting content, but it's more classroom style and everybody's just kind of listening, but it's hard to be able to listen and practice if you don't have the device.
Yeah, and obviously it's like you saw me fumbling up here with this device. It's not my device. Like it then becomes a challenge too when you're giving learners a different computer every time. They've kind of like got to develop this relationship with this machine and understand how it works. So yeah, do they have a machine? Do they have to use a different machine every single time? And how does that impact their practice? Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah. Because we have our online people.
Okay. Something I thought was a great idea in a presentation I went to recently was document cameras. Everybody knows what using that with the mobile phone, because how many of your students have a smartphone? Something like 95% worldwide have a smartphone now, which is shocking to me that it's that high. You can use the document camera. They have a device. Teach them the digital skills using the device they have, because they're not going to have the Chromebook. The Chromebook's going to be, they don't have that outside of class, but they have the phone outside of class. So show them how to access things. Get your $80 document cam, put your phone underneath it, and show them how to access things using their phone.
Thanks. That's a really great example. Okay. Any other questions or observations? What seems relevant? What's not easy to understand and still yet of interest? Do you have any other big questions? We've got like a minute or so left. Yeah, I really do want the people online to hear. So here you go.
So we offer a lot of English language learning classes that are all remote. And that has been a huge opportunity for students because there's no childcare or transportation or things like that. It's been a really great method. However, one of the things I think we're really struggling with, we figured out how to onboard them to their digital class with orientations and things like that, and helping them get the digital skills they need for that. But then once they're in class, like the idea of embedding digital skills and teaching new digital literacy skills feels really hard because they're on Zoom. They're synchronous classes on Zoom. So I just wanted to know if you had any, if anybody had any suggestions for, like, you're not in person, you can't lean over to the person next to you, the device you're using, you're on Zoom, and so it's hard to like click away and come back. Yeah, if there's any suggestions around that.
I should have known I wasn't going to be able to stop early. But two things that come to mind from the pandemic days. First, start with the technologies you know they're using. Nan Fryland does amazing work. She's a teacher from Connecticut who took her whole class of literacy level ESL students, put it into Google Slides, delivered through WhatsApp. So it might be us that needs to shift to using the technologies that the learners can use. That's one thing. I would inch along introducing new technologies incrementally and, like kind of one at a time, so they're not being flooded with all of this new information and possibly anxiety. And then I guess know your tools. Like you were talking about Zoom, so I'm thinking like the Zoom annotate stuff could probably be helpful, or Zoom whiteboard, and figuring out how to integrate that as an instructor, you integrating that to demonstrate how things could be done. And yes, Rachel can add one more thing and then we're going to wrap up.
That's a great topic for lunch today. And I think providing in-language support and peer support, someone else said, which I think is also helpful in those settings.
Okay. Oh, see? Rachel, you can choose to not respond. Okay, so we have many other World Ed sessions coming up at this conference. You can access them all on our handy conference Padlet if you would like to get that QR code. I'll come back to that in a second. Also, we've got lunch with Rachel and others in Bryan and Beeman from 1 to 2. And then Rachel's session is at 2 in that same room. And then tomorrow afternoon, there's a tech jam that the leaders of the Strand are you can join that. I'm not sure where that is. It's in Hoover. Okay, check Hoover. Here is my email address, jen_vanek@worlded.org. I would love to hear from you. You could also, the slides are in the Padlet. Okay, so you're going to find all these QR codes in the Padlet. But I do hope to hear from you. I would love to know what you're thinking about this, and do the evaluation, because I read them, I take them seriously. I really enjoy understanding what you thought. So thanks for coming. Take care.